world is opposites. When we attach our inner well-being to the world, we are signing up for a roller coaster of immense consequence. But when we attach it, when we pursue it, we seek it and cultivate it from within, it is a beautiful progression and evolution. We are back with another reflection on the daily Vedantic. This philosophy is so precise in its definitions of all of the things that we think about or even use in our common language so often, but never hear an actual definition of, and think that we all are talking about the same thing, but each of us has a very different definition in our heads, if we have a definition at all. Good example is love. We talk about love all the time in our society. Ask someone how they would define love. Probably a whole lot of imprecise language. Luckily, within a manual for living, a timeless philosophy like Vedanta, the sages throughout history have been very precise in its articulation of a definition of love, and that is seeing no otherness. Love is seeing no otherness, a complete identification. Or you have one of my favorites that I say often on the podcast. Wisdom is the capacity, well, really technically the intellect, but you could interchange wisdom in here as well. Wisdom is the capacity to see the end in the beginning. I had never heard a definition of wisdom like that before. How does this philosophy define the world? Something as broad and vague as the world's even more broad and vague than a term like love. And yet this philosophy has a very explicit and concise definition of the world. The world is opposites. This is as concise as it can seem confounding when you first hear it. The world is opposites. That philosophy says the world is opposites. What does that mean? This entire experience is a balancing act of opposites. Pleasure and pain, joy, sorrow, balancing out. It might not be numeric in balance. You might have one painful moment, one sorrowful moment in the midst of 10 joyful moments, but the value of that sorrow negates the value of 10 joyful moments. Maybe 20, maybe 30. Whatever sets you back to the baseline. We actually see this scientifically in neurochemistry, where your brain, as it, let's say, eats something that is sugary, releases dopamine. Scroll through social media, it releases dopamine, and that spike feels good. So where does the balance come in? The opposites within an experience like that? Well, after the brain receives this spike of dopamine and it registers, hey, there's a spike in this neurochemical, we know scientifically that then the brain is going to release another neurochemical. It's called dynorphin, that downregulates the dopamine past baseline to where there's a dip before it gets back to balance, to homeostasis. That spike is mediated by a dip and then back to homeostasis. There is no spike that just stays elevated. There is no ice cream, chocolate, smoothie. There is no delicious comfort food that keeps you in an elevated state. There's no drug that keeps you in that elevated state. Whether it's social media, whether it is sugary foods, whether it's cocaine or Adderall, the world is just designed. It is by design going to give you the opposite experience. It is as plain to see as it is profound and just pattern breaking, pattern destroying within how we view the world. Because I say plain to see because we know this from doom scrolling for 45 minutes on our phones. Social media and how we feel afterwards. We know how we feel afterwards, and yet we still jump back in and can't wait for the dopamine hit. We know how we feel after indulging in something that we know we shouldn't, and yet we often make the same choice to do it again. The modern myth is that you can have just an incline. If you make enough money, you're just sitting at an order of magnitude higher baseline. And that improved baseline is it's the new normal. The spike that stays, and yet there is no spike that stays. They know this with lottery winners. A year later, their satisfaction with their life goes back to what it was before they won the lottery. Just like the neurochemistry, our world is designed to level things out. It's why you see such crazy phenomenons like Schadenfreude. Schadenfreude is a term given for getting pleasure in seeing other people's pain, where people read the gossip columns in newspapers or magazines, and they love when they see a celebrity or rich person getting taken down. The world wants to kick that person's ass if we perceive that person to be riding high, to level things out. I heard someone say that they don't like to use the word excited because, I'll tell you who the person was in a second. They don't like to use the word excited because that's how dogs feel before they run into the street and get hit. I heard this in a Kanye documentary where he was talking to Rick Rubin, the famed producer, and Rick Rubin said, "Hey, I'm excited to get started on the new album. I'll see you in Jackson Hole," wherever they were going. I think that's where they're going, in about a week. And Kanye, either through wisdom or a bout of mania, just cuts him off and says, whoa. We don't use the word excited. I don't like the word excited. Excited is what dogs feel before they run into the street and get hit. And in the midst of The World Has Opposites, in the midst of that documentary where there was a whole lot of foolish behavior and seemingly idiotic things. I'm not going to project, but seemingly idiotic things that was being said. This is before he went like Nazi Kanye. And I was like, damn, that's really smart. But even in the midst of us coming across something really wise, maybe employing it in our lives. But Kanye is a good example of someone that has ridden as high as it gets. I don't know how many, let me see how many Grammys does Kanye West have, and how many has he been nominated for? So let's see. 75 nominations. Whoa. I knew it was going to be a lot. I didn't know it was going to be that many. 24 Grammy wins. And yet the world is opposites. Those peaks, almost 100 nominations for Grammys throughout a career. And my family suffers from bipolar. It runs in our family. And so bipolar is a perfect example of exactly this. Polarity, the opposites. The conditions that create those peaks of artistry create the valleys of foolishness. Peaks of creative achievement followed by valleys of going broke. And there's no Schadenfreude in this. I think he's gone broke from being a billionaire because the world levels things out. That is the world, and that is the bad news. Out there is just opposites. If you ever feel excited about something, you celebrate something, there will be a dip on the other side. Placing value in the world is placing value in this seesaw of opposites that will go up and down in perfectly equal measure. Negate themselves. Powerful career, maybe a detrimental family life. We all know examples like that. People we know, where in one area they succeed, in one area it's profound failure. But here's the good news. Where there isn't this opposing polarity, equalizing itself, balancing itself out, where there isn't that set of opposites always working against each other, is when we go within. That is where you can have continual progress. Continual movement in the right direction towards the higher. An evolution, shift, progression towards the higher. Always climbing up. It might feel static at times, but as we touched on recently, how something feels and how something is are often very different. Might even feel like you're regressing, and yet maybe it's just your sensitivity to that aspect of life that is a hallmark of your progression. When you think, oh, I'm backsliding, just because you're now much more sensitive to that area of life. White lies now actually take a toll on you, and they didn't before. How you feel, how it is, might be very different. Two totally different things where you think it's backsliding and it's actually continual progression. That is something we're told over and over again within this philosophy. Not only can our progression upwards be continual, moving in the right direction continually, but that sense of satisfaction, fulfillment can only come from work we do within. That baseline that goes from a flat line to an incline, that comes from work we do within. Because thinking you're going to have an incline or a new baseline, an elevated baseline because you get $1 million in the bank account, $10 million in the bank account, $100 million in the bank account. Not only could you, I know a friend that I mentioned on this podcast before, sold a company for $1 billion, 4 months later, could not get out of bed for 4 days because he was so depressed, because it didn't give him what he had spent a decade of his life thinking it was going to give him. I'm not saying there's no value in the economics that then take care of your worldly obligations. This philosophy actually says there's real value in having enough economics to take care of worldly obligations. That basically just makes sure that baseline, stable life, doesn't become a decline where you're devolving, not taking care of your worldly obligations and devolving with all of these things that are not conducive to a spiritual philosophical practice. Things like bills piling up, obligations not met, the weight internally of knowing that you're not meeting your duties. Those are important. I'm not saying that they aren't. But the myth, the illusion that if I can get to this level out there, it's going to solve everything in here, is one of the most pervasive illusions there is. If there's an antidote to the sobriety that comes from an ever-increasing awareness that the world is opposites, the antidote is this. What is within is infinite. What can be found within? Satisfaction, fulfillment, the bliss from going within, the bliss that can be cultivated from developing your intellect to discern right from wrong, to see the end in the beginning, the cultivation of the intellect through stillness in the early morning hours. There is no limit to that bliss within. It's you cultivate it and it gets better and better and better and better and better and better. infinitely better. Infinitely better than the opposites that we see over and over and over again when we seek those very same things in external achievement or acclaim or admiration. I don't know much about the Kanye situation lately, but 75 nominations, 24 Grammys, and you can't see your own kids. That is polarity from my perspective. This is my own projection. That would be a world of opposites if I was experiencing that. Probably same for many of you. I can't imagine. That is as unimaginable as winning 24 Grammys. The world is opposites, and when we attach our inner well-being to the world, we are signing up for a roller coaster of immense consequence. But when we attach it, when we pursue it, we seek it and cultivate it from within, it is a beautiful progression, evolution, ascension, unmatched by anything that the world can offer. I say this because of experience. I say this because that is what this philosophy has said for 5,000 plus years. But it means nothing unless you experience it. Don't take anything within this philosophy. It's one of the 3 daily practices. Question everything. Don't take anything for granted. Study, reflect daily. First one, question everything. Don't take anything that I'm saying as gospel just because I'm saying it or because a philosophy that's been around for 5,000 years says it. Only take it as gospel if it maps to your experience, if you see it as a grounding wire of truth that just proves true over and over and over again. And instead of the feeling of excitement, which means to feel outside of ourselves, we can move towards feeling inspired, which means to feel the spirit within ourselves. From without to within. From opposites to progression. From an illusion to the higher. That is today's reflection on the Daily Vedantic. We'll see you next time.